All right. Today on our show, this is Cam and Otis show. Today we're going to start with or talk about goals. Where do goals come from? Why are goals important? I mean, you hear about it all the time. You know, all the self help books, all the leadership things, all the team building stuff, to include my stuff, talk about goals. So, where do goals come from? Cam, any thoughts on that to get us kicked off?
So I think it's important to note that there's a lot of different types of goals. You can think about your goals for the day, your goals for life, your goals for business. You can apply these type of ideas to just about anything, but it's important to define what type of goals you're talking about as far as being successful and making sure that you have those goals well defined so that you can really be successful.
No,
Um,
it's true. I mean, I agree with you. Were you going to say something else on that?
nope, I was going to say, so why does everyone say we have to have goals?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you why. If you don't have goals, then how do you know where you're going? Right? I mean, really the reason goals are important is it helps you go do what you want to do. And I think back to my years in the army. And the army has a great system for evaluations and setting goals and things like that. But it's not used. I'd say it's well less than 50% from my experience. My 25 years and all the organizations and units that I was in. Uh, the system wasn't used as it was fully intended. And what I'm talking about is annual evaluations. And I know there's a lot of corporations out there that do annual evaluations also. And from people I've known, and I've worked for a couple of them, and people I've known in those organizations, it's a very similar process or similar attitude towards it as my experience in the army, which is, well, we'll get to that because it's really not important, to set my goals or to set my, talk with my subordinate to help them set goals. And what that drives you to is a number of things, and I won't get into the evaluation and development thing, but it drives you into an attitude of an idea of, well, I just show up at work and whatever pops up is what I do. And if you go through life like that, even just looking back at days and weeks, let alone years and decades, you find out at some point, you look back and it's like, well, what the hell did I do?
Mhm.
Did I really accomplish anything? I can think back to my evaluations, and going in with my commanders and sitting down, and before I go in to do the sit down, and he tells me what he's going to write and that sort of stuff. I'd have to complete the support form and write down what I did in the last year. And when all you do every day is pretty much react, knowing what you accomplished over that time period, you don't know, because it just doesn't, because you just react. I mean, I can think of many times when I was working in the corporate world where, man, at the end of the day, when I closed up shop, whatever time it was, I was smoked. I was just done. But I had no idea what the hell I did that day. I couldn't tell you if I accomplished anything that I had planned to accomplish or what. So, over the last few years, I've become a firm believer in goals and how important they are.
Yes, sir. And I can definitely relate to that. I know recently working from home and trying to get my business going, I have a lot of things on my to-do list, but it's about making that jump from a to-do list to goals. And I think that's an important distinction that a lot of people miss. And I know I'm one of those occasionally. Um, your to-do list is all the things that you need to get done, but your goals are what you need to get done that day specifically. So I had a lot of days just like you where I was getting up, at 5:30 in the morning. I would work out, do some yoga or something, read a book, and then get working on my day. And I'd check my email, and that would just send me into a spiral of just taking whatever was there in front of me and going and doing it, rather than setting out the time and being proactive with it, and setting out time and moving forward with those goals that I want to accomplish. And I've had days, just like you said, where at the end of the day, I don't feel like I got anything done, but I know I'm tired from all the stuff I did that day. My fiance will get home from work and she'll say, "Oh, how was your day? What did you do?" And I go, "I don't know. I worked all day, but I couldn't tell you what I did." But then there's other days where it's I did this, 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 and this, and that's because I had that whole day planned out ahead of time. And I went in knowing I was going to accomplish those 5 goals, have those 5 calls, 5 meetings, whatever. And then I was able to accomplish those and I actually knew what I did. And I think you feel much better after those days. Definitely.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, well, thanks to uh, Apple and Microsoft, we've become conditioned to reacting to emails because what is the notifications? They fly into your screen, they make a sound. Even if you turn those off, on my computer, my email app pops up with little red numbers. It's like a red number. Oh my God, I've got to take action because red means take action, right? So
Yes,
I've
sir.
got this red number sitting on my email icon. It's like, oh man, I wonder who sent me that email. Oh, so even when I turn off the notifications, I'm still getting drawn to it, and that distraction. So yeah, you have to take control of it. And I like to refer to it as transitioning your mindset from reaction to proaction. And in those days that you just described, the difference in those days when you have a focused set of tasks that complement and support your goals, at the end of the day, man, you're like, damn, I knocked some stuff out. And you know what? You're a heck of a lot more efficient in
Definitely.
knocking and completing those tasks when you do it that way than you are if you're just like, yeah, I've got my to-do list that's not prioritized and it's just a list of, things on your notepad
Mhm.
that you want to get done. Yeah, that doesn't work the same. It's better than not having a list, but it still
Right.
doesn't, it's not the effect that, hey, I've set forth these goals and what I'm doing today, this task that I'm doing right now is supporting my goal to have, gain more clients, to uh, lose 10 pounds, whatever it is, whatever those goals are. When you do those things that support your goals, your body, your mind is much more engaged in the accomplishment of it. A heck of a lot more satisfied when you tick that thing off.
So that's something I'd like to touch on. So we kind of skirted around this as a little bit of there's advantages to technology, there's disadvantages, and then there's also just as many advantages and disadvantages to doing things the more traditional way, if you will. And so one of the best adjustments I've made was I was doing my to-do list. That was a huge step forward to me of physically writing out things. And there's some advantages to, physically writing things, physically checking things off your list. But I was missing having that clear timeline of when I was going to work on things. Then I started putting specific times into my to-do list. And then from there, I would put those into the Google Calendar on my phone. That way I'm getting the best of both worlds, basically, where I have the tech advantage of notifications for meetings, letting me know that I need to work on something, letting me know that I have an hour blocked out right now to go work on my business plan, anything like that. And then I also have the advantage of being handwritten, the satisfaction you get from physically checking something off your to-do list. And then you also have the memory boost. So this is something I think a lot of people kind of think about, but some studies have shown it where students, if you're taking notes, typing on a computer versus writing by hand, if you write by hand, you remember it better. So if you have a handwritten to-do list, you're going to remember more things on that to-do list than if you're just typing it out. So I think that's a way that you can kind of have the best of both worlds, but there's still all the challenges you're going to have with technology, no matter what, definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, but if you use the technology to support you as opposed to you letting the technology drive you, I think that's the difference in it. It's not. It's a supporting tool, no different than having a notepad and a pencil and writing stuff down, right? Why do you write stuff down? Well, so you can remember it, right? Whether
And I think a good point on that is just like how you don't always want to have a notebook with you. you got to leave that phone behind. You got to shut off those notifications and those things
Mm.
occasionally. And that's how you're able to, really just use it as a tool for that proper setting and not let it take over.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I wasn't really gonna run down that road, but and since we're talking about it, setting that schedule, uh, one of the things that a good friend of mine talked to me about a year and a half ago. She was telling me she does this, and man, she's good at it. She's real good at setting her goals and things like that. And uh, but what she does is she divides her day into three categories: focus time, flex time, and personal time. So think focus time is that you do one thing at a time. Everything else is put away. You're just focusing on that one thing. You can have focus time that's 3-4 hours long, if you can stay that focused for that long and do multiple things within that focus time, but you're doing one thing at a time. Flex time, flex time is that time where it's like, okay, well, I'm answering emails, making some phone calls, maybe working on doing a little research on something, or
The what can I get done time,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's your kind of checking off your to-do list, if you will, sort of thing. I've got all these other things that are going on. You're multitasking, all right?
Right.
And then personal time. And the reason personal time is in there is because if you don't take care of yourself, don't do things for yourself, whether it's reading or doing some PT, working out, you're not taking care of yourself. Even if it's not, I mean, I'm not saying, when you talk about reading, it doesn't always have to be professionally developing. It can be, it could be fun, so, but you're doing something for yourself, or it can be, hanging out with your wife, or whatever, as long as you're doing that personal time. So if you look at your day like that and you break it up like that, and then you take those things that you have to do, that you want to do, I should say, changing that mindset from have to want to, and you use the focus time to do those tasks that require focus, like, I don't know, working on a proposal for new business, so you're focused on that one thing, or anything else that you do, but you're focused on one thing at a time, and fully present in the execution of that task as you do them.
So one thing, it kind of backtracks a little bit, I wanted to mention. So you'd mentioned the system inside the Army for the evaluations and setting goals, and how it wasn't truly used to its best extent. So that's something that you can find a lot, that there's good systems in place to address problems that people are facing, but they're underutilized. And I think that's something that you can see in, name an area, and we could find an example of underutilization of a good program or something. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how to improve that, if it's just a simple form of, the golden rule, communication, or anything like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, communication. Throwing back to what were the 2 or 3 answers that we had on the rugby team?
Communication, protect the golden egg.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. Those were the standard answers. Anytime I asked the team a question, those But yeah, communication, and if you're not communicating with your team, and they don't understand what your goals are, and which relate to the organizational goals, then how can they set their goals? How can they know what they're supposed to do? Because then they sit around and they're twiddling their thumbs until you tell them what's next.
Right. And I think that touches on something really good, talking about the communication hierarchy. And so I think, the Army is a very clear, well-defined hierarchy in a lot of ways. But even in business, you have that same type of setup. So if you are at the very top and you're setting clear goals, and you have your tasks to make those goals happen, then that's going to get everyone below you to go along that same pattern. And I think that can trickle all the way down to lower level employees who are thinking that same way of, these are the goals I'm going to accomplish. And then, hey, their goals line up to their manager's goals, who line up to your goals as a CEO.
Yeah, we call that nesting. So, I mean, that was one of the things we used to do with our unit missions. You had the higher mission, the next higher mission, and then all your missions coming down from that. Then you have your mission, what your organization is going to do, nests with the higher missions doing it. So your goals should be similar. So if I am the team leader of this organization, I have my personal goals. I also have my organizational goals, and those organizational goals, my personal goals, I sure hope they nest with the personal goal or with the organizational goals, or there's something wrong there. But you have to have that ability to put them out there and for everybody to understand them. If the team doesn't understand what the goals are, then the team can't operate fully and freely as they should, right?
Right.
Because they don't know what's on and what's off.
And I think to expand on that a little bit, so if you have everyone on the same page as far as the goals and how my goals align to the goals of the organization, once you get that set, then you're going to have a lot more fulfillment inside your company or inside your team. Because then, when I'm, just to use the easy example, when I'm sweeping the floors, I know I'm sweeping those floors for a really good reason that is driving this company forward. And gets me up every morning to go sweep the floors. And if you have that lined up like that, you get that kind of sense of fulfillment from the bottom all the way up to the top.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. And I love that analogy because, if the janitor knows why he's keeping the floors clean, or he or she keeping the floors clean, and knows the importance of that to the organization, then yeah, darn right. And I believe it was Simon Sinek. I was at a talk that he did a couple of months ago, and I think he was talking about it. And one of the things he was talking about, talking to a barista in an organization, and I can't remember which company, but how that barista was like, man, I am happy with my job because I know here's the opportunities I have, here's the organizational goals, here's the core values, and that barista, he had bought into the whole thing of what's important to the organization and believed in it. I mean, whereas you go to another organization, and I'm not going to slam any of the labels, Starbucks or Dutch Brothers or any of them out there, but it's an interesting thing to do, and it might be a little fun thing to do as you're buying coffee at a shop or McDonald's. Even if you're stopping in McDonald's and getting that cup of coffee, ask that cashier how happy they are.
Mm-hmm.
Are you enjoying what you're doing? What you're doing contributing to the greater success of the organization?
And I think that you could tie that in, and I'll not name a company that you just mentioned, but this did jar that idea to me, is knowing what their goals are as well at the top level. If your company, so I'll toot my own horn for a second, if your company's mission is to build the future of sustainable agriculture, then that's really cool and catchy to get everyone in on. But you have to be able to sell that as well. If you're a large company who might just be trying to make a dollar here and there, you need to work on that value bundle really of what your mission is on a larger purpose. And that kind of gets into some more perceived value and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's something important, because then you get more of a sense of fulfillment, definitely, if everyone's on the same page and going towards a good goal. And that if you're communicating it down to the bottom, then you're going to get the kind of feedback that's going to make sure that you have that kind of right goal. Definitely.
Oh yeah, and that's actually it's just jarred something in my memory. That's one of the things that makes the military so successful, because everybody in the military understands what the mission is and what's the purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one of the things that vets struggle with when they get out is, well, what is my higher purpose? What is that bigger mission that what I'm doing today, whether it's sweeping the floor or digging a hole or writing a proposal? How is that bettering the greater good? And I've coached a lot of vets and helped them try to work through that and come up with what it is that still fills that that void that's created when they leave the military, and how they can still have that greater feeling of a greater purpose by what they're doing, the organization they're working for, the company they create, whatever.
I think this is a good time to make an important note on that the goals, like we said, they can be in any variety of things. There's plenty of people I know out there who are working jobs they hate because that has nothing to do with their goals. And they couldn't care less what the goals of the company are, because their goal is to get that paycheck every week until they can, go buy their new car or their new truck or whatever. They have their own set of goals. Maybe it's not something as frivolous as that. And, their goal is to run a nonprofit on the side, but to give them a little bit more credit. But everyone has their own personal type of goals. And if you find that type of purpose, that can start leading you to where your goals are going to be coming from. So I think that goes into something that I had written down that I think we'll kind of get more into where do goals come from themselves, and how can you come up with your own goals, and how can you move forward successfully like that.
So where do they come from?
I know you and I have talked about this, the planner versus doer idea.
Yeah.
So this is something in behavioral economics that kind of tries to define why people act irrationally on a daily basis, even though they know how good their behavior should be. So there's lots of different examples for this, but I'll go through and try to concisely define this as best I can. So one of the basic functions here, or ideas here, is the concept of utility. So I'll define that real quick if people aren't familiar with it. It's a measurement of usefulness that a consumer obtains from a good. So think about that as enjoying one movie versus another. How much would you enjoy a Sylvester Stallone movie versus going watching Pokemon? Then how much would you enjoy eating ramen noodle versus steak? Or what is the feeling of security you get from buying a deadbolt and putting it on your front door? So they're all kind of abstract things that we put this measure on so that you can explain choices that people make. So naturally, we all want to maximize our utility in everything we do. We all want to be as happy as possible. We all want to get the most usefulness, the most enjoyment about everything that we're doing in our life. So going back to the idea here, so it's a planner versus the doer. The planner maximizes your utility for your lifetime. This is you sitting right now and going, okay, what am I going to do this week that's going to feed into what I'm doing for this month, for my goals for this year, so that by the time I'm 45, I'm doing this. And having that clear plan of how you can move forward in your life. Another easy example is the planner. So saving money. The planner will save money as much as possible because he's thinking about retirement. The doer never thinks about retirement, because the doer maximizes his utility in each 24-hour period. So the way you think about this is you're a new doer every single day. And so that doer is not thinking about tomorrow's doer or thinking about the planner. All he's thinking about is, what can I do today that makes me the happiest? And so that's why, you don't work as hard as you can, because, I can just work tomorrow. Or you don't eat healthy because you can just start your diet tomorrow. Who cares? That's a problem for future Cam, right? The planner is the one creating goals. The doer is the one changing the plan and the distraction in being distracted by every day. So then I'll ask you, how do we get the planner and the doer on the same page?
Well, let me throw something at you first, because, people that are listening may want to dive into that a bit more. Where'd you pull that from?
So I pulled that from Misbehaving by Richard Thaler.
Okay.
Kind of the founding of behavioral economics. So
yeah. Well, that's an interesting thing, because, one of the things I coach people on also is being present in the moment, which denotes doer, right?
Right.
But you can't be present in the moment if you don't know what outcome you want, which denotes planner. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand. Now, one of the things I like to talk with my clients about when I'm coaching them is you have to create an outcome, and that outcome is developed from your goals, right? But you can't think about your outcome while you're performing, because then you think about the end state, right? You think about the buzzer at the end of the game instead of the play that you're trying to execute right now. So you have to accept and trust a process, because in order to get from A to B and where I'm at today to where I want to be, my outcome, I have to have a process. That's my plan, right? But in order to execute my plan fully and at the best of my ability and for the best outcome for me, then I have to be present in the moment. And I like to talk about it in the fact of what you do now creates the future that you want. But you have to know what you want, your goals, going back to goals. You have to know what you want in order to do what you're doing in the present moment, to create the future that you want by doing what you're doing today. The things that you do in this very moment create the future that you want. Or another way I put it is, you can't worry about the past because it's already happened. You can't predict the future because you never know what the true outcome can be. But what you do in the moment right now creates the future that you want.
So I think at the risk of ruining all the great explanation I just gave for the planner versus doer, I just had the realization there's a really easy and silly answer you can put to it now, is that the planner and doer just need to communicate. And if the planner could function as a leader and delegate to all these doers and get everything right and explain to them that they're gaining that utility in the long run, then it would work out. But this kind of brings me into something else I had written down, which you can use in conjunction with goals, which is commitment devices. So the planner in that theoretical situation needs some sort of commitment device to give the doer the utility that it wants, right? Mm-hmm. So I'll define commitment devices a little bit better. I think that was confusing. So basically, I'll just use an example right here. So let's say that you want to lose 15 pounds. You've been trying to lose this weight for years and years and years, but you just can't get there. So I go to you and I say, okay, Dad, here's what you're going to do. Write me a check for $1,000. And I'm going to make that out to Taylor Swift because you just hate her music so much. You can't stand the idea of her getting any money. And then I say, okay, if you don't lose that 15 pounds by July 20th, I am mailing this check off to Taylor Swift and she's going to get your $500. And then that end goal, that commitment device will make you go and lose that weight, because you just can't stand the idea of Taylor Swift getting any of your money, right? So there's different forms that can take in many different ways. But so going back to the planner and the doer, you need to have the doer realizing, giving him some enjoyment out of the future enjoyment, if that makes sense. So there's programs that come up with this where it's something like, every time you don't go to McDonald's, I give you 50 cents. And that helps give you that little bit of utility boost of, I got 50 cents today, that makes up for and connects you to the planning goal of losing all that weight you're trying to lose.
Those are great tools, and I think anybody can come up with what those things are, whether it's a carrot or a stick, whether it's hey, if I stay on my diet, all week long, and then Saturday night I can go get ice cream, right?
Right.
That's the carrot. Or if every time I get off my diet, that means I've got to do 20 more minutes of a workout that day or the next day to, because I had an extra beer last night, so now I've got to go walk for 20 minutes to make up for that beer I shouldn't have had last night. Mm-hmm. Doing it that way is a great way, and those commitment, what do you call them? Commitment triggers, right?
Commitment devices.
Devices. No, those are great things that we can pull around and help us stay on task. And you know what it really boils down to is discipline. Mm-hmm. I was listening to a podcast a while back. Either that or doing some research. Heck, it all blends together at this point, where the info came from. But the guy was talking about what are the success factors of an entrepreneur, and is it the passion? Is it the thing that they've invented? Is it their team, and all these sort of different things? And what he said was, it boils down to discipline. It's just flat out, if you ain't disciplined, and whether you're an entrepreneur or just somebody working in a business shop or McDonald's, but if you ain't disciplined, then you're not going to get these things done that you want to get done. If you spend time, going back to your planner and doer, if you spend time putting all these great ideas together. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and all you do is talk about it. You never execute it. You're lacking the discipline to perform and lacking the discipline to execute, aren't you?
Definitely. I think discipline is one of those overarching themes that if because then also you could even say that with your discipline, you have your to-do list and your goals, and if you can stay disciplined enough to go rigorously with those, well, then your to-do list gets so much more functional. If you have it set up with your the focus, flex, and personal time, and you are diligent with separating those 3 times out, then that's going to help you be more successful, accomplish those goals, get that to-do list done. It kind of spreads around and helps tie everything together, I think.
Yeah, yeah, good stuff. And I think it's time for us to start talking about what we learned. So
So
I made you go first last time, I think, didn't I?
I did, but I actually have mine ready to go this time. So if you can
Oh
catch me
boy,
up.
oh boy. Okay.
So I was going to say, and you've probably mentioned this to me before, but I wrote it down and I'm going to try to shift my schedule that way more, was the focus, flex, and personal time. I really like that. The time management is still something that I'm struggling to get my systems in place where I can be really successful with my time. And a lot of that is, penciling in time for things. But I think making it more black and white really with focus, flex, and personal will help me a lot. So that I'm able to carve out that time where, phone's off, I'm sitting at my desk working on this versus what I usually do, which is start typing on something until I get an email or until I realize that there's dirty dishes in the sink. So I think that's going to help me a lot, definitely, and probably help a lot of other people too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think for me, it's the refresher on the planner versus doer, because I've one of the things that I've done over my career, both in military and business, is be that planner, and in the military, I wrote contingency plans that would sit on a shelf and collect dust for 10 years until we pulled it off and reviewed it again. And that, so just creating plans. And then, yeah, I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, I have no problem knocking out a 5-year plan, and give me
Right.
15 minutes. I can sit down and write my personal 5-year plan for you. Do a great job of it, man. People read it like, whoa, dude, that's awesome, man. Really. And then, you know what I do with it? I fold it up and I put it in the desk drawer or throw it away. And then, so yeah, you have to take that effort, and you have to make the effort to shift from just putting a plan together to executing, going back to performing, being present in the moment, not getting wrapped around what's the outcome, because the outcome is always going to be better than it was when you started, whether you get the result you want or not. But if you believe that it's always going to be better, then it's a heck of a lot easier to start moving forward, right?
Definitely. And kind of going back to the communication we said between a planner and a doer, when you're going through your example, it made me think you were somewhat functioning as a planner and working with a lot of doers, you could say, basically. And if you're in a business that's working like that, you're a planner and your team is a bunch of doers, your job is to try to communicate that plan and get them bought into the overarching theme, which, just like you're doing, rugby would be another great example. You're going in and they all just want to have fun and screw around every single practice because that's just what they want to do today, right? Nobody's thinking about the state championship game 5 months from now. No one's thinking about nationals. No one's thinking about that. And it's your job as the coach to communicate that planner mentality down to the doers that you're working with.
Great example. Great example, bringing it into back to the team. No, I think that about wraps it up for goals. I think we dove into more of why goals are important than where they come from, and I think maybe we'll circle back around in a future show and revisit goals again, because I think it's such an important piece of making ourselves better going forward. And
Definitely.
so
I think the goals will be a multi-part series, definitely.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. And speaking of multi-part series, I just wanted to say a bit about the next show we're going to do. It's going to be about business plans. Do I need a business plan? So, kind of a great spinoff off of our planner versus doer discussion earlier, right?
Spoiler alert, you need a business plan.
Ah, well, giving away the thesis of the show before we even start talking about it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, great. Hey, thanks for listening to us today and enjoying the company. And I hope you learned something from the Cam and Otis show. I'm Otis.
And I'm Cam, and thank you all for listening.